And I want to give you the latest now on Occupy Wall Street. I said, don't dismiss Occupy Wall Street. I said it the first day, and everybody said, look, it's just a bunch of crazy kids, and it's nothing. It turned into nothing. And I said, don't dismiss them. And they will come back. That happened this fall, and we had problems. I said, they're not going away, and they'll bankrupt our cities. And then they will come back after it gets cold and starts to warm up again. They will come back and recreate 68. This I warned on November 16th after an Idaho man who allegedly spent time with the occupiers in D.C. fired shots at the White House. Here it is. The violence that happened in 1968, I contend, is going to happen again. This next summer is going to be a summer of real violence. Okay. So, will this movement shrink into obscurity, or will they be back for 68 like glory? Well, let's fast forward. This last Friday, Adbusters posted a call to occupy Chicago this May. The idea is to disrupt the G8 and NATO summit. Beginning May 1st, May Day, that's a communist thing. Beginning May 1st, the movement is calling for 50,000 people to occupy Chicago for the entire month. The plan is to set up tents and kitchens and barricades, and they set the stage for the, quote, biggest multi-nation occupation of a summit meeting the world has ever seen. Adbusters warns that, quote, this time around, we're not going to pick up or put up with the kind of police repression that happened during the Democratic National Convention protest in Chicago in '68. Nor will we abide by any phony restrictions of the city of Chicago they may want to impose on our First Amendment rights. We will go there with our heads held high for and assemble for a month-long People's Summit. We will march and chant and sing and shout and exercise our right to tell our elected representatives what we want. The Constitution will be our guide. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. In case you forgot about 1968, here's a look at what we can expect. That's 1968. All right. Yesterday, January 29th. Is this happening? I said it would happen. A summer of violence, a summer of rage, and they would recreate 68. January 29th, capitalism haters in Brazil at the World Social Forum called on people to take to the streets on June 5th for the global action, which would be in support of social and environmental justice. June would be, a summer of rage. The forum made up of representatives from the Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street, and Spain's movement. It's also planning its own summit at the end of June to parallel with the UN's Rio +20 summit. The UN summit in Rio will focus on creating a green economy. Wow, that sounds like Van Jones, doesn't it? The World Social Forum is angry because the big bag capitalist system is going to reap the profits. And guess what city is going to hold the next year's social forum for the world? Yes, you guessed it. Cairo, Egypt. So I just told you that Occupy is already starting to warm up for the summer. More civil unrest over the weekend. On Saturday, occupiers in Oakland got out of hand when the so-called peaceful march turned ugly. More than 1,000 occupiers turned up to march. Pockets of protesters started throwing bottles, clashing with police in riot gear. The occupiers then gathered on the steps of City Hall, where they burned the U.S. flag. They spray-painted graffiti on City Hall exteriors. Outside City Hall, the word revenge and stab a cop. These people are inciting violence, and we say nothing. They eventually broke into City Hall, overturning furniture, breaking windows, and even destroying a model of the building that is over 100 years old. Damage to the City Hall Plaza is estimated now at least $2 million since October. Who's going to pay for that? Well, that's right. The people with jobs. Oakland police estimate now 400 people were arrested after Saturday's siege on the city. Even Oakland's mayor admits the Occupy Oakland protest movement has refused to be non-violent like the rest of the movement claims to be. And last but not least, it's Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street. Occupiers are finally moving out of the home it was occupying in East New York. They claimed that they were just renovating it for a homeless family. The family never moved in, so they used it as their own little headquarters until the building's owner threatened to call the cops. They did, however, manage to leave behind some empty beer cans and "Be the Crisis" spray painted on the walls. I warn you that they will come back, and they will come back this spring and summer much stronger and globally. None of this is Magic 8-Ball stuff. None of it. All you have to do is look at the facts, listen to their words, think like a revolutionary, see what's happening all around the world, check the star field, which way is it rolling, and the outcomes are all logical. All right, I just showed you how the radicals are planning, summer like the summer of '68 on steroids, a period of rising leftist movements. It was a weak global economy, the rise of the welfare state. It was an election year. It's all coming together this summer. Which direction do you think we're headed? To get an update, a guy who has been really following this for us up in New York. Also, Andy Andrews, who is the author of, I can't say this with a straight face because it sounds like such a bad book, but it's really not. It's a really uplifting and good book. How Do You Kill 11 Million People? John Seidel is the front page editor for theblaze.com, and Buck Sexton up in New York, who Buck has been watching Occupy Wall Street. You actually lived there for a few days before we asked you to please come home. Buck, let me start with you. This weekend, I think a ton of really bad signs came to the forefront. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, you saw things going on that I think you'd expect more on the streets of Mogadishu than you would even in Oakland. They were using shields, which I had never seen before. They actually had sectioned off garbage cans and were using these sort of sections to protect themselves from rubber bullets and other projectiles the police were using. They were setting up barricades. They were screaming, "Kill the police." I was watching on a live feed as all this went down. As you know, they will send this out to the whole world. You just have to know where to look for it. I follow most of their major Twitter accounts, so I tend to know when things are up. Even if I can't be there physically, I can see everything that's going on. Yeah, they were yelling, "Kill the police." They were clearly gathering together, ready to engage in violence. And what we saw was very disheartening stuff. The scariest stuff I've seen, certainly since the last major Occupy Oakland event.
I asked you, I don't know how long ago, to do a kind of an e-book on this movement. When does that come out in first place? Do you know?
Well, e-book's ready.
Because I said to the police a year and a half ago, don't let your unions get in with these people. They say that they are, standing there for your pensions. Don't be duped by this. Now they're on the streets. Kill the police. Agree or disagree that what's coming this summer is 68 on steroids, globally?
Yeah, I think so. You were talking about 68 before, and I think it's important that people realize it's not even just Kent State. It's not even just the stuff that happened in the U.S. There was a march of 1 million students in Paris. There was what they call the student massacre in Mexico City. There were a number of major sort of student revolutionary movements around the globe, sort of similar to this to Occupy. But what we also saw, and I think this is worth bringing to the discussion, is the reemergence of major tyranny in response to some of these revolutions. The Prague Spring ended when there was a major infusion of Warsaw Pact troops, for example. So as we're looking at these student movements cropping up and how they're destabilizing major countries and big parts of the world, we have to also recognize that there are other forces that may come into play too. Okay. And certainly in the case of Egypt, as we're all talking what's going to happen there, I don't think it's going to be a bunch of pro-Western students in charge, and I don't think it's necessarily going to be the Muslim Brotherhood in charge. We'll have to see. The military is still very important there, and we may just get too spooked by what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Let me bring it to you guys now. Andy, you are a motivational speaker.
Well,
you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a guy who.
I try to see the best, and
right.
I try to put it across. Yeah.
Right. You flushed. I mean, and I say this with all due respect because I did it too. You flushed your life down crapper, and you reset, and now you're like, you know what, it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
But now you're coming in, you've written the book, you know, How to Kill 11 Million People, and now you're coming in and you're talking to me about Occupy Wall Street, and you're warning against this. That's not very motivational.
Well, I'm not, I listen to John and I listen to Buck and these guys on Blaze, and I love these guys, and I'm not smart in that normal way like these guys are. These guys are very intelligent, but I can spot a trend. You know, I can see similarities in things, and you talking about 1968 and seeing what happened there, you know, I just got out my notes today, some of the notes that I did on doing the book, How Do You Kill 11 Million People, and I thought, man, now this has happened before. It's not just Occupy Wall Street. It's not just the Occupy thing, the ad buster thing I heard you talking about. It's not just 1968.
Yeah.
Look at this. I just took just a few notes today. See, if you look at 1933,
Yep.
the Occupy Wall Street people were nothing in the world, but back then they were brown shirts. They called them brown shirts. And these people went around agitating, and they would block workers, and they would keep people from getting in things. Germany in 1933 was a democracy. Okay, it was a democracy. Free press, free educated people. The brown shirts were the Occupy people. Here's the crazy thing that people forget. Everybody seems to think now that Hitler took over. He didn't take over. He was elected. He was elected, and when a government building burned right near something important, he asked for and was given emergency powers. Okay, he asked for, you know, the emergency. They gave it to him, and very soon he enacted the law of protection of the people. Now,
here's what's interesting, and I want to just pause for a second, Glenn, because I know this is a popular point of yours. You know, we talk about you're a big fan of history, obviously, and we need to be. Here's why. Adbusters rolls out an ad referencing 1968. Who do you think knows their history? Those people know their history.
Those people do.
yeah, they know their
Exactly.
history.
That's why they can get away with, you know, the left always talks about, oh, the right is doing code language. I don't know anybody who's speaking code language. I don't know a soul. We're so dumb we can barely speak the English language, let alone a code language on top of it. I was mocked so much about saying, look at the imagery. I'm a visual guy. Look at the imagery. Look what they're doing. And most people will dismiss it because they don't see it. But the revolutionaries do.
Right.
They know what Che means. They know what that star means. They know what 68 means globally.
Right.
And I can tell you, there's probably a lot of conservatives who are sitting there out scratching their, man, 1968. What was that? What was that all about? It's been so while. I don't remember that. And I had to brush up. You know, go and do it. Go brush up. Learn what happened in 1968. Learn what happened in the 30s. And, you know, there's something else I want to say, too. And, Andy, you can feel free to jump in. But violence. So we're talking a lot about violence. These actions have become violent. Violence should not be the barometer. Here's what I mean. By the time they're violent, it's too late.
Right. I know exactly where you're going here.
You know, there's probably a lot of people out there. And I had a conversation with a gentleman in New York who's a leader of a prominent nonprofit. He said, you know, I have people emailing me, and this was before this kind of resurgence this weekend. He said, I have people emailing me saying, you know, are you following what's going on with Occupy Wall Street? He said, well, I don't know. They haven't been doing much. Is anything going on with them? And I'll admit, you know, it was a dormant period. But if you're waiting until there's something big that happens to catch your attention, to catch the network news's eye, it's too late.
This is my hardest thing. When I announced Restoring Love, I can tell you what summer is going to be like. I did tell you a year ago.
Right.
This next summer is going to be 1968 at best. You have to have the opposite movement. We have to gather together and be together and lock arms and know what we believe and be unshakable in love and peace and say, you're not going to scare me. You're not going to change my behavior. No, I will be good. But trying to get people to understand this in advance is damn near impossible.